February 10th, 1979, 5:17 in the morning. A commercial fisherman named Dale Morrison was running his trawler through the Barnegat Inlet near Toms River, New Jersey, when his nets snagged something heavy. He figured it was debris, maybe an old tire or a waterlogged bag of trash. He pulled it up. It wasn't trash. It was a human torso wrapped in plastic sheeting, arms and legs severed, head missing. The smell hit him before he could even process what he was seeing. When New Jersey State Police arrived 2 hours later, they found something the mob didn't count on. Teresa Ferrara had breast implants, and those implants had serial numbers. Within 48 hours, they knew exactly who she was. A 27-year-old woman from Queens, a drug dealer, a mob mistress, and an FBI informant who knew way too much about the biggest heist in American history. Teresa Ferrara wasn't supposed to matter. She was a girlfriend, a drug courier, someone the Lucchese crime family used when they needed small jobs done. But Teresa made two catastrophic mistakes. First, she tried to rob the mob. Second, she knew about Lufthansa. And in 1979, when Jimmy Burke was systematically erasing everyone connected to that $6 million robbery, knowing too much was a death sentence. This is the story of how a wannabe model from Long Island became entangled with one of New York's most dangerous crime families, how she turned informant while living inside the operation, and how her involvement in the Lufthansa heist aftermath sealed her fate. From drug deals to FBI wires, from stolen cocaine to severed body parts floating in the Atlantic, this is the short, violent life and brutal death of Teresa Ferrara. But here's what makes this story different from every other Lufthansa victim. Teresa Ferrara wasn't just in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was actively playing both sides, stealing from the mob while informing for the feds, running her own criminal operation while her boyfriend thought he controlled her. She was the kind of liability that keeps made men awake at night, and in the world of organized crime, liabilities get handled permanently. Teresa Ferrara was born in South Ozone Park, Queens, on September 5th, 1951. Working-class Italian neighborhood, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where the social clubs on the corner weren't just social clubs, and where asking too many questions about what your neighbor did for a living was considered unhealthy. Her family wasn't connected, but they weren't immune to the influence either. You grew up in Ozone Park in the 50s and 60s. You understood certain rules. You knew which guys to respect. You knew which streets to avoid at certain times. You understood that some people lived by a different set of laws. By the time Teresa was 18, she'd moved out to Long Island, trying to distance herself from the neighborhood, trying to build something legitimate. She had the looks, 5'5", dark hair, sharp features. She talked about modeling. She talked about acting. She had portfolios made, went to casting calls, did the whole circuit. But modeling is a brutal industry, especially in 1969, when the competition was crushing and the exploitation was normalized. Most girls didn't make it. Teresa didn't make it. And when the modeling dream died, she did what a lot of young women from her neighborhood did when they needed money fast. She moved back to Queens, and she started dating a connected guy. Tommy DeSimone, known as Tommy, was 31 when he met Teresa in 1974. He was a Lucchese crime family associate, which meant he worked with the family, did jobs for them, earned with them. But he wasn't made. He hadn't taken the oath. He couldn't be made because his father wasn't Italian, and the rules were absolute on that front. But Tommy didn't need to be made to be dangerous. He was a drug dealer, a loan shark, a hijacker. He moved cocaine and quaaludes through Queens and Brooklyn, working under Paul Vario, the powerful Lucchese capo, who ran operations out of the Bamboo Lounge in South Ozone Park. Teresa became Tommy's girlfriend, and that relationship opened doors. Not good doors. Doors that led to money and danger in equal measure. She started dealing drugs for Tommy, small amounts at first. A few grams of cocaine here, a bottle of Quaaludes there, street-level stuff. But Teresa was ambitious. She saw how much money was moving through these circles, and she wanted more than just her boyfriend's pocket money. She wanted her own operation. And Tommy, who thought he was controlling her, let her build it. That was his first mistake. By 1976, Teresa Ferrara was dealing serious weight. She had her own customers, her own supply chain, her own cash flow. She was moving cocaine through Queens and Nassau County, working clubs, bars, private parties. She wasn't just Tommy's girl anymore. She was a player, and that attracted attention, not just from customers, but from law enforcement. The DEA had been watching Teresa for 8 months when they finally moved in on her in 1977. They caught her in a controlled buy, selling 2 ounces of cocaine to an undercover agent at a diner in Flushing, open and shut case. She was looking at federal time, minimum 5 years, possibly 10 if they stacked charges. She was 26 years old, she'd never been inside a prison, and she knew exactly what happened to pretty young women in federal lockup. So when the DEA agents offered her a choice, testify against your suppliers or go to prison, she didn't hesitate. She flipped. But here's where Teresa made a calculation that most informants don't make. Instead of giving up Tommy and disappearing into witness protection, she stayed in. She kept dealing. She kept living with Tommy. She kept moving through Lucchese circles. And she started feeding information to the FBI. Not enough to blow her cover, but enough to stay valuable. Enough to keep herself out of prison. She became what law enforcement calls a confidential informant, and what the mob calls a rat. The FBI loved her. She had access. She was living with a Lucchese associate. She was in the rooms when deals were discussed. She knew names, addresses, supply routes. Between 1977 and 1979, Teresa Ferrara helped the FBI build cases against a dozen mid-level drug dealers in Queens and Brooklyn. She wore a wire twice. She set up controlled buys. She provided testimony that sent 3 people to prison. And the entire time, Tommy had no idea he was sleeping next to a federal informant. But Teresa wasn't content just playing informant. She wanted money, real money. And in 1978, she saw an opportunity. A cocaine connection in Florida was offering a deal, $250,000 worth of product on consignment. The idea was simple. Take the cocaine, sell it in New York, pay back the supplier, keep the profit, standard operation. Except Teresa had a different plan. She was going to take the cocaine and disappear. Steal $250,000 worth of product from people who definitely would kill her if they found out. It was suicidal, it was greedy, and it was exactly the kind of move that gets people dismembered. She started planning the theft in August of 1978. She told Tommy she had a big deal coming, a connection in Miami who could supply them with premium cocaine at a discount. Tommy loved it. He helped her set it up. He made the calls. He arranged the logistics. He had no idea he was helping his girlfriend rob the mob. In September, Teresa flew to Florida, met the suppliers, and took possession of 10 kilograms of cocaine. Street value in New York, nearly $500,000, if cut properly. She told Tommy the deal fell through. She told the suppliers the cocaine was seized by customs. She told the FBI she was working on a big case. She lied to everyone. And then she started selling the cocaine herself, pocketing every dollar. For 3 months, it worked. She was pulling in $15,000, $20,000 a week. She was living better than she ever had. New clothes, new jewelry, cash in the mattress. Tommy thought business was just good. The Florida suppliers thought she was stalling. The FBI thought she was gathering intelligence. Nobody knew what she was really doing. Nobody except Teresa. And then Lufthansa happened. December 11th, 1978. 6 armed men walked into the Lufthansa cargo terminal at Kennedy Airport and walked out with $6 million in cash and jewelry. It was the largest cash robbery in American history at that time, and it was orchestrated by Jimmy Burke, an Irish associate of the Lucchese family who worked out of the same circles as Tommy DeSimone and Paul Vario. Tommy knew about the heist, not beforehand, but afterward. And because Tommy knew, Teresa knew. She heard the conversations. She saw the money moving. She knew who was involved, how much they took, where some of it was hidden. She knew too much. Jimmy Conway was paranoid on a good day. After Lufthansa, he became a killing machine. Anyone who talked too much, anyone who spent too much, anyone who drew attention, Conway killed them. Slowly, methodically, he started eliminating everyone connected to the heist. Stax Edwards, shot in the head. Marty Krugman, disappeared. Joe Manry, frozen solid in a meat truck. Tommy DeSimone, killed by the Gambinos. The bodies stacked up through late '78 and into '79. 15 people connected to Lufthansa ended up dead or missing. Conway was cleaning house, and Teresa Ferrara was in that house. Paul Vario, Tommy DeVito's boss, started getting suspicious of Teresa in January of 1979. She was too curious. She asked too many questions. She seemed to know things she shouldn't know. And then came the bust in Flushing. The FBI raided a cocaine deal on the waterfront, arrested 6 people, seized 50 kilograms of product. It was a major operation, months in the planning, and somehow the FBI knew exactly where to be and exactly when to be there. Paul Vario started asking questions. How did the feds know? Who talked? Word on the street was someone had tipped them off, someone close to the operation. Vario started looking at everyone in his crew, and he started looking at Teresa. She'd been at a party 2 weeks before the bust. She'd been in the room when the deal was discussed. She'd met some of the people who got arrested. Vario didn't have proof, but he had instincts, and his instincts told him Teresa Ferrara was a problem. He mentioned it to Tommy. "You sure about your girl? You sure she's solid?" Tommy defended her. Of course he did. He loved her. He trusted her. He had no idea he'd been living with an FBI informant for 2 years. But Vario didn't need proof to act. In the mob, suspicion is enough. Suspicion plus knowledge of Lufthansa, that's a death sentence. Vario talked to Jimmy Conway. Conway talked to his people. And the decision was made. Teresa Ferrara had to go. She knew what was coming next. They made her watch. That's how it works sometimes. You betray the family. You don't just die. You die knowing why. You die knowing that you caused it. They likely questioned her first. Who did you talk to? What did you tell the FBI? Who else knows? Teresa probably talked. Most people do when they're staring at a gun. Talking didn't save her. Nothing was going to save her. Teresa Ferrara was shot twice in the chest. But they didn't just kill her. They dismembered her. Arms severed at the shoulders, legs severed at the hips, head removed. This wasn't just murder. This was a message. This is what happens to rats. This is what happens when you steal from us. This is what happens when you know too much. Her torso was wrapped in plastic sheeting and dumped in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of New Jersey. Her arms, legs, and head were disposed of separately, probably in industrial trash compactors or construction site dumpsters. They were never found. The mob wanted to make absolutely sure these 2 people disappeared completely. No bodies, no crime. No crime, no investigation. Just 2 more people who vanished in New York City in 1979. But they made one mistake. They didn't know about the breast implants. When Teresa's torso washed up in Barnegat Inlet on May 18, 1979, 3 months after her murder, the medical examiner found the implants immediately. Saline implants, relatively new technology at the time, and they had serial numbers etched into the silicone casing. Those numbers traced back to a plastic surgeon in Manhattan who kept meticulous records. Patient name, date of surgery, payment method. Teresa Ferrara, procedure performed in 1976, paid in cash. The identification was confirmed through dental records obtained from her family on Long Island. The FBI opened an investigation, but it went nowhere. Teresa had been an informant, but she'd also been a criminal. She'd stolen from the mob. She'd lied to her handlers. She'd played both sides. The FBI couldn't publicly acknowledge her cooperation without compromising other ongoing investigations, so they buried her file. The NYPD investigated Tommy DeVito's murder, but without a body, without witnesses, without any physical evidence, the case stalled. Within 6 months, both investigations were cold. Paul Vario was never charged with ordering the murders. He continued running his crew until 1984, when he was finally convicted on extortion charges and sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. He died in 1988 of respiratory failure. Neither man was ever formally connected to the deaths of Teresa Ferrara. Teresa's family buried her torso in a cemetery on Long Island. Her mother never recovered from the loss. She spent years trying to get answers, hiring private investigators, pressuring the police, demanding justice. She never got it. In the world Teresa chose to enter, justice doesn't exist. There are only consequences. Teresa Ferrara's consequence was being dumped in the ocean in pieces. The reality is brutal and simple. You're valuable until you're not. You're trusted until you're not. You're alive until you're a liability. And then you're fish food in the Atlantic Ocean and nobody remembers your name. Teresa Ferrara learned that lesson. She just didn't live long enough to tell anyone.